Hello, friends. Sorry I'm running a little bit late. I'm sure that comes as a shock to no one. Exiled Faye, hello, hello. How are you? What is up? How's it going? And to anyone else who may be lurking, hello, good time zone. I have finally gotten my coffee this morning. I'm running a little bit late because I wanted to sneak my yoga in this morning. Not gonna lie. At this close to the end of the year, what usually happens is my routine just completely crumbles because there's so many things going on and there's so much chaos and so much to do that it just kind of becomes a free-for-all. So I'm trying to hold on to that routine, trying to do those things that keep me happy, healthy, all that kind of stuff, so that the chaos leading up to the departure for Christmas is a little less chaosy. So yeah, why is there a blank page in there? That is not what we want. So yeah, for anyone who was hanging out yesterday, I know that the afternoon crowd or the morning crowd tend to be different. So, but for anyone who was hanging out yesterday, I did have to end stream before I actually finished doing the editing that I wanted to do because my husband came home and admitted that he had not had lunch. And we wanted to get some food in his tummy as quickly as possible. I am always talking about the importance of self-care, of eating, hydrating, resting when needed. So we wanted to do that for the hubs. So I did edit the last just like page and a half of a scene. Of the second scene that we were working on yesterday off stream. As I mentioned at the end of stream, it wasn't particularly exciting. There was nothing really spectacular going on in terms of what I changed for that scene. It just needed a spit polish, which is nice. It's nice sometimes when a scene doesn't need very much. I did name this chapter since we are doing that. Since I decided that's happening. I usually take my chapter names from quotes within the chapters. I've been doing it a little bit differently this time around, and I'm kind of happy with it. It feels sufficiently different from the way I do like my Aravalia chapter titles. I also realized that the only series I've ever written that doesn't have chapter title names was the one I co-wrote. So I don't know, maybe chapter titles are my thing. I don't know. Maybe they're like I don't know. I was gonna say maybe they're part of my brand. I don't know. Do people expect it? Do people want it? You guys tell me. But I gave it a name. They haven't been particularly difficult to name as yet, which I appreciate. So we did chapter 4 yesterday, which was 2 scenes. I didn't really do much with the first scene in chapter 4. I did add some description because as I mentioned, I'm very bad at making sure that stuff gets in there the first time around. And then for the second scene, I didn't really add anything. I think there was a guy, this we did on stream, there was a guy that I mentioned that I hadn't given a physical description in a previous chapter, which worked out synergistically. So I made him a gnome. I'm trying to have a wide array of racial diversity on the Mage Council to really highlight that this is a fantasy world, because sometimes I get into this bad habit of it's a fantasy world, but the majority of the characters that you see are either humans or elves because it's quick and simple to do it that way. So if it ain't broke, don't fix. I mean, yeah. And it seems to be, I mean, sometimes it's extra work, but it's worth it if people enjoy that aspect of the, you know. Someday I want to write a story that has just completely off the rails chapter title names. I've seen Neil Gaiman do that a few times, and someday I do want to just have a completely off the rails, but not this project. I have a project in mind for that. We'll see. A couple candidates. But yeah, so other than that, this really just received a spit polish. It didn't even really take me that long to finish it up off stream. It was more just needing to be able to stop and cook and get food in Ghost Pepper's belly. So today we're going to be doing chapter 5, which is a different chapter 5 than was chapter 5 before, and the first part of chapter 6. So originally, again, if I'm boring you guys, if this is like super boring, you guys can tell me to just shut up and edit. It's fine. Hey, Woof. Big word. Why does that feel like you're being like, big words, good job, you know more than one syllable? How's it going, Woof? What is up? So originally when I wrote this, what was the beginning of chapter 4 and what is now chapter 5 were one chapter, and then the second scene that I edited yesterday was after that. I had sort of group chunked the plot lines together a bit more, and I'm spreading them out now because interspersing series plot into places where it means that I'm leaving one plot at a high tension place to go to the next one, and so on and so forth, makes the pacing work better. Hotline Huervo, how are you? You're a bit stressed with work. Well, I hope we can offer you a place to chill and relax. Good luck. If you need us, we are here for support. And if not, I hope I can just be a soothing presence in the background. Hotline is always welcome here, for sure. Your other brain cell is in the chat if you need it as well. I'm sure he would be happy to lend you a hand or 2. I almost said 5, but you don't have 5 hands. I don't know why my brain was like, he'll lend you a hand or 5. I don't know. 2 sips of coffee this morning. If you guys are wondering just how weird my brain is, now you know. That was not me insulting Woof and Hotline, by the way. That is their own joke. Disclaimer. So yeah, I'm breaking up the plot lines a bit to increase the pacing. So this scene that we are editing today was originally written at the same time as the other series scene, but I've sort of separated it out. We know what we are. I know you do. I know. That comment was more for the people who are like, why is she talking to a new chatter like that? OMG. No. Hotline and Woof are friends. And I would not joke in such a manner with people I did not know were comfortable with it. So yeah, probably gonna try to name chapter 5 today since I'm editing. It's just one scene, but because there's a second scene to be edited for chapter 6, I might not name it until I have gone through all of it. Also, for anyone who's keeping track, when I was writing this book, there was a scene that went completely off the rails, like different than what I had planned, and it just turned into this sort of like situational comedy thing where like the character, in order to do like what she's supposed to do, the character is like knocking things off tables and making people like trip over each other. That's this scene. So I'm really interested. I have no notes for this scene. I have no plans to change anything. My plan is to keep it the way that I wrote it, even though the way that I wrote it was in no way the original way that I was planning on writing it. So I'm going to be very interested to actually fully read back over it and see if it's as good as I remember it being, as I want it to be. It might not. It might be... This is the perils of being a plantser, as I consider myself. That's a planner pantser. Is that sometimes you go off the rails and you write pure gold and everything is amazing and you're like, I love this. Sometimes you go off the rails and you expect that you're going to love it and you read it back through and you're like, the fuck was I thinking when I wrote this? Who am I? What is this? I'm hoping we won't get one of those today, or it's going to be a very interesting stream. But when I skimmed over it to make my final editing notes, it didn't seem egregious. Now, I don't know if that's because I was just like, oh yeah, this scene, and kind of glossed over it, or because I actually saw merit in it. So we'll see. And then the beginning of chapter 6, I only have one note for. The beginning of chapter 6 is where we start to get into the 25% mark. So this is our first major confrontation. I've kind of mentioned this before on stream, but if you look at plot structure, so if you're ever interested in like how plot structure works and you want like a really practical, easy way to track plot structure that like anyone can do, watch a Marvel movie. Because you're gonna notice that 25% of the way through the movie, 50% of the way through the movie, 75% of the way through the movie, there's going to be confrontations. Usually in an action movie, these are action sequences where someone gets into a fight, and so it's quite literally confrontations. And you'll notice that during some of these confrontations, there's a minor victory. Usually around the midpoint of the movie, there's some kind of turn where something happens. And then, of course, you'll have your big final confrontation near the end of the movie, where things will get resolved. So, plot structure doesn't always have to look like that. You don't always have to have a, confrontation or a fight at the 25% mark, at the 50% mark, at the 75% mark. It doesn't always have to fit into that nice, neat little structure. But you usually do want to have plot points of some kind. At your 25% mark, the stakes generally are raised, right? Something happens that changes the makeup of what's happening in the story so far. In this case, we start out the book with Elaith and Jalen already in media res, right? They are in the process of enacting whatever they're of acting on whatever their inciting incident was. They have gone on quests, they have attempted to complete something, and right off the bat, we see the inciting incident for this book is that those quests are interrupted. They are drawn off their path and instead drawn together. And it seems that they will simply resume that path and continue on their way, all but twined together. But at our 25% mark, as soon as Elaith is freed from the prison that the mages put her in, instead of flitting off to resume where she left off, she actually turns around and attacks the mages. She actually sets their city on fire, and so there's a raising of stakes, right? What Jalen thought he was getting into is not what he gets into, how the story plays out is going to be different than anticipated, because now not only are they trying to complete quests, but they're tiny little bit maybe on the run. So if you're looking at your plot structure, those are the kinds of things that you want to be thinking of when you're looking at, like, what's my 25% mark? What's my turning point? Usually, at the turning point, you have an even more major pivot. And in this case, of course, this is when Jalen and Aleith encounter these sleeping knights, who they think are just statues, until the stone shatters and they wake up and start talking to them, right? And so you have this what you thought this pilgrimage was supposed to look like is completely not what it is actually supposed to be. I tend to not get too, do you plan all this when plotting or while writing or while editing? Good question. I tend not to think too heavily about this during the initial planning or writing stages. My planning stage consists of, what is the main plot in my head? Like, what are the things, what are the scenes that I have planned? What are the ideas that I have for the story? To a minor extent, if I've written an outline, I might glance at, what do I think my 25% is? What do I think my 50 is? What do I think my 75% is? Just to make sure that the information is there, to make sure that I know where my plot points should be. I don't, aside from a quick, here's, where a plot point should be happening, and really sometimes my notes are, a conflict should happen, or the stakes should rise, or whatever. Aside from a little bit of quick jotting, I don't worry about it too much in the planning stages. I don't worry about it too much in the writing stage. The story usually expands on its own when I'm writing it, and I usually, like I said, just follow it off the rails and do whatever. If I feel like I'm really getting into the weeds during the writing stage, I might take a step back and say, okay, how do I trace a plot structure here? What does this need to feel like it's not just totally out in the middle of nowhere? When I really start thinking about structure is when I'm editing. So when I sit down to do that, when I update my outline for that first editing draft, that's where I start to go through and say, okay, where's my inciting incident? Where are my plot beats? Is my character changing enough throughout this story? Where's my character development? What is missing? Where do I need to move things? So maybe, I've talked to people who say to do it differently, to be aware of your plot points right from the beginning, and maybe that is easier. But for me, I usually just focus on getting the ideas out of my head first, and then when it's time to actually go in and create a structure for them, for me, is during the editing stage. The way I think about it is, when I'm outlining, I'm planting seeds. I'm creating a garden. I'm making my flower beds. When I am writing, I am growing those plants. I am letting the leaves branch out. I am seeing what blooms. I'm not necessarily in control of that. They don't necessarily sprout where I originally thought I was going to put them. The garden grows wild. And then when it's time to edit, that's when I step in as a gardener and say, okay, these flowers should be in this flower bed with these other flowers. Let's build a structure here. Let's create a place for the vine crawlers to crawl. Let's trim this back. Let's add a few extra blossoms into the pattern here. And so that's kind of how I think of my process. So for me, much of that structure comes later in the process. I'm more concerned with just telling the story at first. And the more you do it, the easier it is to be able to tell a story that kind of has some rudimentary form of plot structure without you having to impose plot structure on it, if that makes sense. The more you do it, the more used to it you become, you naturally understand, oh, there probably needs to be an extra conflict here, or oh, I should have a turning point, or I should raise the stakes here. Or as you're writing, you'll be like, oh yeah, I'm at the part of the book where maybe there should be a little bit of a cliffhanger here, or there should be a little bit of, ooh, let's throw this drama in, and that'll work really good as a plot beat. But where you actually, for me, where you actually bring that all together is during the editing stage. Hopefully that made sense as an answer. So I'm gonna start getting set up. The only note that I have today is for the start of chapter 6, or not for the start of chapter 6, for the end of chapter 6. The end of the first scene of chapter 6 is that I'm starting a fight in that scene, and I might need to expand it. So I've kind of mentioned this before, but when I do my action scenes, I write a very rough sort of foundation for them, and just basically get a little bit of back and forth, so I know what the conflict kind of starts to look like. And then during my edits, I usually go back in and make that a little more concrete and expand it a little bit. So I will be looking at that to see if I need to put more detail in or make it go on a little bit longer or whatever, just to make it feel action-y enough. So that's the only really, that's the only thing I need to be concerned about adding. When I'm editing, I never know if I'm going to have... I never know if it's going to be a smooth, spit polish kind of thing, or if it's going to be I need to tear this apart sentence by sentence and put it back together kind of thing until I dig into the scene. And it really varies depending on how much I was struggling with writing a scene on any given day, or how I felt about what I was putting on the page at the time. Sometimes a scene can be really difficult to polish because I was very uncertain of what I was writing in it and just kind of putting down whatever words to move on. And so sometimes editing a page can take 20 minutes. Sometimes editing a page can take 5 minutes. If that's your experience with your editing as well, don't despair, because it's normal. Some scenes are easier to write and easier to write and easier to edit, and some are harder to write and harder to edit. You're not necessarily going to have... That's the thing, is with writing, you're not necessarily going to have consistent days anyway, but you're more likely to have that consistency because you're sort of starting from scratch. When you're editing, you're working from a foundation. So if you had a couple days where you were struggling with a couple scenes, or if you hit a rough patch in the book, you can expect to hit that same rough patch while you're editing, which can make the process feel, I think, a bit more draining. But it is normal. We're starting with 2,581 words for the first scene here. And then... when we get to the second scene, I may as well write this down as well. It's going to be only 2,005 words. So that to me indicates that I may have to expand that confrontation, because this is on the shorter end of what I would expect for a scene that has the beginning of a fight in it. So I might need to go put 200 or 300 words at the end to expand that. I might not. I may have ended the scene when I did because it just felt finished, and that might still be the case. Oops. Oops. I hit a wrong button. Also, I did have to make one change yesterday because I realized that when Ciri's mentor was telling her about her quest, he said, that there was a human with a scroll, a mage scroll that she needed to recover. But in the scene, I made it a halfling that has the scroll. So I was like, I should fix that. Another thing to keep an eye out for, like, because people are often like, oh, I'm so worried I'll contradict myself during the writing. I do that all the time. As long as you fix it during edits, it's fine. So let's get this productivity party started. We will be doing 30-minute sprints because for me, I need that extra time. But if you're writing and 30 minutes is too long, please feel free to break it down into 2 15s or a 20 and a 10 break, whatever makes you happy. I might be a little quiet for the next few minutes. Sometimes I catch the contradiction as I'm writing it, so I have to make a note to go back and fix it because I'm not stopping now. I do the exact same thing. I do the exact same thing. I just put a red note in my notes, and I'm like, that's a future B problem. Our first sentence, I've been reading them out loud. Our first sentence here is short and sweet. It took time to get used to teleportation. And it's a perfectly good hook, so I'm not going to touch it. Here's another, sometimes I talk about these things as they come up while I'm editing. Here's another thing to keep an eye out for. So this says, at first it felt like the world bent and twisted as space was traversed, but it'll work better if I take out those filter words, it felt like, and just say, at first the world bent and twisted as the space was traversed. It's immediate. It puts you directly into that sensation. the opening of the scene was quite rough, so I am 5 minutes in and like 2 sentences in as well. Sometimes there just isn't a better way to say the thing that you want to say, even if you don't want to use the same word. Ooh, congested might work, though. A young man darted through the crowd, his short legs allowing him to nimbly navigate even the tightest packed portions of the throng. I do love me some alliteration. Oh no, Exiled Fae! I hope it cooperates with you. I hate it when Twitch acts up. We shall stretch. Welcome back, Exiled Fae. I hope that Twitch is working better for you after a refresh. I assume you did a refresh. Oh, momentous is the word of the day. I use that word quite a bit. Probably too much. Here, I feel like it's important to start making distinctions that Siri uses magic in a different way from all the other characters. So I'm taking an opportunity to sprinkle a breadcrumb there. I hope you guys can't hear the loudness. I apologize. Don't know what's going on downstairs this week. AB Coffee, you're here! I haven't seen you in so long! It is I, me, and I alone have returned from the depths of not being here. AB Coffee, how goes it? How are you, my friend? I've missed you. Miss the fam. Missed you too. Just like Ghost, coaching season sucks. All the evening time away. Ah, yes. I understand. Ghost is counting the days to the end of the week because Friday is his last day before break. I will be working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week and probably streaming those days as well. But Ghost Pepper only has to make it till Friday and then he's done for Christmas. And he's very, very pleased. Change this because another contradiction. How's it going? What is up? I had my character talk about why does no one run into me, and then I decided that she was incorporeal, so I need to choose one or the other. I'm going through January, 3 tournaments. Is it basketball? Did you say that you were doing AB Coffee? Is that the sport? Ghost does rugby, so they do some of it in the fall, and then they break for the winter, and then they do more of it in the spring. In the slow part of the year at work, so I can be a little more active instead of lurking. That's awesome, Kit. I'm glad to hear it. Also, I hope work is going well if you're working at the moment. Basketball, seventh graders. Yes. Yeah. I remember when Ghost was doing basketball and it was very hectic. Um, Rugby can be hectic too, but I think it suits his schedule a little bit better. There's a lot of. I feel like with rugby, I don't know if you have rugby in your area. Here they seem to space out the tournaments a little bit. Basketball feels like it all just happens at once. It's madness. I'm finding lots of tiny little alliteration in this today, and it's just making me so happy because none of it was intentional. The all at once potion can be broken out. It's up to the kids to separate it in game, but it can be hard to prioritize certain decision making in specific scenarios. Yeah, no, totally. Like one of the things about school sports is teaching them how to deal with different types of situations, right? And basketball is a place where you're interacting with a large group of people. There tends to be a lot of high emotions involved. Scheduling is a thing. I know that's one thing that Ghost goes through, all the teachers go through with all the kids in all the sports in their school, especially with the high schoolers and the senior kids and stuff, is like, if you want to be captain of the volleyball team, then you still need to fit it around your homework and class and stuff. Almost got a technical foul last night. Oh no, AB Coffee, what happened? One of my players didn't like a call, and I educate them that under no circumstances should they challenge the referee. Yes, that's something that they work on with the at Ghost School too, is being respectful of how you address people. Because if a player challenges it, especially with emotion, it's an almost immediate technical. So I saw him start to throw a small fit at the ref, and the coach is not allowed on the main court. But to keep him at bay, I walked on and talked to the ref about the call myself. The kid was right to be upset, and the ref said she should give me a technical, and I replied that it would be understandable. Granted, I avoided it because I apologized. I wasn't angry, but one misstep there, and I get tossed out of the game. Yeah, but I think it was the right call, right? Because if the kid had gotten emotional, then it would have been a completely different. You would have been teaching a completely different lesson at that point, then, right? Showing him how to better understand what to do in a situation like that, like how to handle yourself, how to carry yourself. Hopefully that kid will take that to heart, and then in the future, if they're feeling like that in the moment, they'll remember to stop, take a breath, figure this out in a reasonable manner. That can be so hard to learn. I honestly didn't learn how to do that until my 30s. So, you know, it's important. And I know from what Ghost said that basketball can be like emotions get hot in basketball a lot. And if teams aren't teaching the kids how to manage that, it doesn't always go well. Like I know one of the reasons why Ghost Pepper stopped doing basketball was because not all of the other teams that their school would interact with were managed in the same way as they managed their team, and he was constantly frustrated by that. He was constantly frustrated by the way he had to interact with parents, by the way he had to interact with other coaches. So it's a very, very important lesson. Where did I stop here? I know the timer has run out, but I'm just gonna finish this paragraph here. I just wanted to make sure that if I use this, because divesting doesn't seem to be a thing. Divested. I don't know, because it's there. Just to make sure I'm not, like, inventing. I do recall that when I was writing the opening of this scene, I was struggling a bit, so it makes sense that that took a bit more time. Hopefully we can finish this scene in the next sprint, because I do want to get through the next one as well. I am thinking that when I start book 2, I'm going to spread out. I'm not going to work on 2 scenes at a time necessarily. When I do the next book, because it feels like I'm compressing too much work into a small amount of time, but that's a next year problem. I have a parent that complains to me about playing time for his kid. Oh God, that's such a common thing in like school sports. I understand you want your kid to play more, but at this level we play to win and develop kids that have a shot at playing in the high school level or beyond. That's pretty typical for, I don't necessarily entirely agree with that, but that's pretty typical for middle school sports. The kid is, if I were to dastardly rank them, ninth best of 9. He gets minutes appropriate amount of time, but the kid hasn't even shown me that he wants to play. Slow in practice, not paying attention, doesn't remember the plays. That's true, because one of the advice that Ghost gives to a lot of, that Ghost school, that their coaches give, is that if a kid wants more playtime, that they should participate more in practice, like go above and beyond, show that they are invested in the team, and then they try to reward that kind of stuff with more playtime. Granted, I'm as cordial with the parents as possible, but it's an oof when I see him come up and talk to me. Yeah. Makes me think of those parents that basically make their kids do sports. Yeah, it's, I mean, real talk, it's a thing that, like, and Ghost sees this all the time, that parents want something for their kid and their kid wants nothing to do with it, and it's really difficult. And it's not just sports. I can't stress that enough. Like, I think we see it a lot in media, the, like, overbearing parent wants their kid to be captain of the football team or whatever, and goes at the, you know, coaches or the teachers or whatever. But this happens in other areas of school as well. Ghost Pepper deals with kids every year who their parents want them to go to Harvard, or their parents want them to go to this prestigious science school, or want them to go into law, or want them to go into whatever. And the kid just isn't suited to that. It's not their interest, or it's not their academic level, which is fine. Like, I'm not saying these kids aren't bright, because, you know, not all of us are drawn to the same type of intellectualism, right? I love science, could never work in the field, don't have the mind for the mathematics that is involved in being a scientist. I couldn't be an engineer. I am fascinated by the work of engineers, but I just do not have the skill. Sometimes we are more, you know, creatively inclined than we are mathematically inclined, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if a parent is trying to force their kid into a specific career and the kid just is not suited to it or even interested in it, all you're doing is creating tension and stress in that kid's life. And I see teachers deal with this kind of stuff every year. And it's like, you want to take those parents aside and shake them and be like, what are you doing? You're making your kid's life harder. And there's no real way sometimes to make them listen. You know, I love my science, and there's no shot I'd ever be a successful engineer. Exactly. I doubt he's on anything, but if I were to describe him, it would be constantly blazed, even though I doubt the 13-year-olds are smoking. I mean, some kids are like that. It's, you know, I think the most important thing, show me the fun science stuff so I can make up stories from it. Exactly. And if I need science stuff, I know a guy who went to school for, like, literally learning to build AIs, and he knows physics and he knows science, like, off the top of his head. And if I have a question, a science question, I know I can talk to him and be like, explain to me like I'm dumb how this works. And he will. He's good at it because he just knows this stuff, right? For anyone who's hung out on Ghost Pepper's channel, that's our friend Mr. Roboto, we call him. He's a teacher as well. And he has a science math mind, and I just don't. I struggle with that stuff. So sometimes parents just get ambitions for their kids, and I get it, right? Like, we all want our kids to do, you know, whatever, but just because dad is an engineer doesn't mean that little Bobby is going to be able to also be an engineer. Little Bobby might have completely different aspirations, and little Bobby might just not be able to do the math or the science involved in being an engineer. That's not a failing. We don't all have the same brain. Our brains don't all work the same way. And for me, that's kind of a hot button topic because my husband works with so many kids who are being told by your parents, you're going to try to get into this engineering school and you're going to get into this engineering program. And English class doesn't matter because all that matters is science, which, spoiler alert, if you want to be an engineer, you need an English background too. That's, sorry, but you do. But it's so heartbreaking because these kids are basically being railroaded or corralled into doing what their parents want instead of someone asking them, hey, what do you want to do? What does little Bobby want to do with little Bobby's life? And full disclosure, I had no effing clue what I wanted to do with my life when I graduated high school. I knew I wanted to write, and I knew I had been told my whole life that there was no money in it and I would never be able to do it. Says someone who now writes full time. Doesn't necessarily make money off of it, but has a way to do it full time and be comfortable doing it. But I had no idea. I had no idea what I wanted to go to school for. I didn't go straight from high school to college. I took 3 years off before I went for IT and networking for a degree that I don't use anymore because now I sit at home and write stories. No one has their life figured out at 18, but it's even harder to figure out your life at 18 when your parents are screaming at you to do what they want you to do. Squanchy, hello. Sorry, I know I got a little bit on my soapbox there, but when you're married to a high school teacher, these are things that you hear about constantly. Study STEM so you can build sentient robots. Study humanity so you can know why this could be a bad idea. Exactly. When I went to IT and networking school, we had to take an ethics class because we were studying programming. We had to basically have a certified ethics class so that if we went into a field where we were working with sensitive information, we would understand the ethics involved in that. That's a requirement in Canada. Little Bobby wants to be a pirate. I could get behind that, Squanchy. There are days that I want to be a pirate too. Yeah, so sorry I know it was a little bit of a soapbox, but when you know teachers and when you are married to a teacher. Hey, Author Goddess, how's it going? What is up? Yeah, when, like, the majority of the people that you know are teachers and have to deal with, honestly, I think the thing that stresses out most teachers and, like, school coaches and parent volunteers the most is parents. It's quite often, the parents that make their lives difficult. 'Cause, yet, they want the best for their kids, and I appreciate that. But sometimes what a parent thinks is best for their kid is not helpful to anyone who's trying to do what's best for the kid. Like, to put it in a delicate way, like, sometimes parents are pushing for something that's actually making it harder for their kid. And it's a teacher's job to try and say, hey, that might not be the best thing for little Bobby. But it's also, if the parents say no, like if the parents want something, the teachers can't necessarily disrespect their wishes either, right? And so they get put in a difficult position where they have to try and do what the parents want without making it harder on little Bobby. When you become a parent, you don't automatically get God-level knowledge and wisdom. True. And the thing is mage a legit career path? I mean, I wish it was squanchy. If you could find a way to make it a legitimate career path, then anything's possible. I'm not gonna say never. Something that gets pointed out to me a lot that I never really thought about before is when you have a kid for the first time, that's your first time dealing with a child. But teachers deal with children every day, every month, every year, which is not the same as raising a child. I'm not trying to say that like teachers know the best way to raise a child, or that like I'm not trying to discount how hard it is to raise a kid, because I know that I don't have kids of my own, but I know how hard it is to raise kids. I have lots of friends with kids. I've seen lots of people, struggle with parenthood and everything that's involved with it, and it's a lot. But because teachers deal with children at certain levels of their development throughout growing up, if they're a good teacher, big asterisk, if they're a good teacher, if they are well trained, if they are actually good at their job, they will be able to help a parent through some of those difficult times because they've seen it on multiple occasions, right? They've learned how to deal with that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, there are a lot of not great teachers out there too. And I can also unfortunately speak to that firsthand. The teachers that I know in my life now are good teachers. The teachers I grew up with were not good teachers. I had to threaten teacher with lawsuits for them to follow the IEP. Yeah, see, that is a bad teacher. The IEP is supposed to be paramount. If something is listed in there, and in fact, I have seen teachers at my husband's school advocate to parents to try to get their kids an IEP so that they can give them those considerations. Because if your kid has an IEP, they need those things that are listed in there. Sometimes it's extra time for a test or a teacher scribe or whatever accommodations they need. It's absolutely important for them to be following that, and you should not have to chase after them to give that. It better be I didn't spend all that time at Mage College for nothing. I also had a teacher report me to CPS because the youngest refused to wear socks and her feet got the funky fumes. That seems like it's going a little over the top for something that was just the teacher being annoyed. Unfortunately, for all that I love the teachers that I know as an adult and that, my husband works with and considers friends, for all that I know that they're good teachers and that there are good teachers out there, there are bad teachers too. And saying like one of the hard things to deal with at a school is the parents. I know that sometimes the reason why parents are like that is because they've had to fight with problem teachers before, or they've had to, like, my husband works at a private school, so sometimes by the time a kid is in that school, it's because the parents are frustrated dealing with the public school system. And that's valid too. That's a valid experience. Hey, Cyberwolf, how's it going? They wanted to boot the oldest because he was stimming by chewing paper. They had already taken and never returned the chewing necklace I gave him. It sounds like your kids are dealing with some not that great teachers, which I'm sorry to hear that, because I had not great teachers growing up, and I think that's left a pretty negative impression on me overall. My opinion of teaching in general has only really changed as I've met people in adulthood that handle things differently. I do think that ideas of how classroom management should be are changing, but they're not changing fast enough, especially not in public school systems. And it also depends on where you are, right? We're in Canada. The education system here is run a certain way. In the US, like, I know so many people in the US who homeschool their kids because the school system there is just a freaking gong show. So, my goodness, did we get on a tangent? Pi, hello, how are you doing? Cheers to that hydrate. Going well now that I found a way around the hotspot data limit. Oh, interesting. What happened, Cyberwolf? We're in a good district now, so it's better. I'm so glad to hear that, Author Goddess, because it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference for your mental health. It makes a huge difference for your kids' mental health. And hopefully that district is giving them what they need for their IEPs. Because I've actually heard, for anyone who doesn't know what an IEP is, it's an independent education plan. And I've actually heard teachers say that the ideal thing would be for every student to have an IEP. Because none of us learn exactly the same way. So IEPs are ways for kids that need extra accommodations, like extra time on a test, or, you know, a teacher scribe or someone to help walk them through certain aspects. I don't know everything involved in IEPs, just a couple of the things. IEPs are how kids get access to that. And usually there's a system that you have to go through in order to get an IEP for your kid. And what a lot of teachers would like to see is for every student to have an IEP so that their education can be tailored to their specific needs, right? And so that you wouldn't have to fight through a process to get that IEP for your kid. Unfortunately, we've also seen the opposite, where the teachers tell the parents your kid needs an IEP, and the parents are afraid that that would come with a stigma, and so they don't go through the process of getting the IEP, which is hard for the kids as well. Can't see me not here? Enjoy your lurk, Pie. Peter! This is the best break time because Peter's just arrived. Peter, how you doing? Are you feeling better today? I have unlimited data with cell, but limited hotspot. That does seem odd if it's unlimited data. We need to pay teacher much better, and we'd have a better pool to choose from. Yeah. No, I agree. Teachers are overworked and underpaid in many, many areas. We don't require a master's degree for teachers here, but teachers with a master's degree do get more pay. My husband doesn't have a master's degree, but he did have to do, he did 4 years. I think he actually ended up doing 5 years because he went to school through a strike. So he did 5 years to get his degree in history and social sciences. And then he did a very intensive year-long training program to become a teacher, which is a requirement in Canada. So that was 6 years of schooling to get to first entry-level teaching. And he had to get certified in each of the provinces that he's taught in as well. So it's not an easy process to become a teacher these days. Oh, I feel awful. The temperature's high today. The temperature high today is -1. It'll get to -6. Peter, please keep warm, keep rested, keep hydrated. Mr. Pepper has a master's degree in my heart. He'll appreciate hearing that, Peter. Smaller classes is important too. Yeah, absolutely. Before I get too deep down this rabbit hole, because I do have tons of editing to do still, I'm going to pop AFK quick for a bio because I haven't done a break since we started, and I'm going to come back and do another 30-minute productivity. Please, please, please continue this conversation. It's so important. I don't want anyone to feel like they have to stop talking about stuff just because I'm stepping AFK. Education is absolutely important. And everyone should have access to good education and good educational resources. I will die on that hill if I have to, 100%. And I think the struggle of teachers gets lost in the shuffle a lot. It's not easy to be an educator by any means, so 100% agree that they should have smaller classes, more resources provided, and definitely earn a living wage for sure. I went to Glasgow to find a comic and a few bits for folks for Christmas. Didn't find anything. Oh no, Peter, I'm so sorry. I will be right back. have returned. I saw just before I left that Author Goddess dropped a truth bomb. Teachers aren't prioritized because capitalism makes education focus only on producing good employees for specifically factories. And they have not updated this education system despite a growing automation in our society, pushing people away from the type of work that they are actually trained for by the education system. 100% correct. Some countries have started to address this. Scandinavian schools certainly are ahead of the curve when it comes to that. Some places, America, I'm looking at you, haven't really addressed this at all. And it's a problem. It's a problem because we are essentially pumping kids through a system that is not preparing them for the world. We are not necessarily moving them through at a pace that allows them to properly gain the information and knowledge they need to be functioning members of society. And then we just throw them out into a world that doesn't really work the way that they were educated for and say, good luck, survive. School is a little different now from when I went, but my big hill about education is there should be more practical elements to it. Literally things like how to turn on a washing machine, how to do ironing, how to know what to get, how to know what a credit card is, and how to get a mortgage. Some of those things I was taught in school. Some of those things I was not taught in school. I definitely think how credit cards work is a big one. My niece does things similar to that, but more life skills would be useful. For sure, for sure. Uneducated people are easier to control, and that's one of the reasons why the system hasn't changed. Lack of addressing is the response choice of the oligarchy. Exactly. I 100% agree that it's a problem. It's a huge problem. I am going to, not because I'm not invested in this conversation, I am going to turn on the sprint timer and be a little bit quiet and do my focus on editing. But again, please feel free to keep discussing this because it's important. It's important that we understand what the challenges are for kids in the world today, because they're going to live in a completely different world than we do. Look at how much I grew up in the, I was born in 85. I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s. The internet didn't become a thing until I was in middle school. And I see how much the world has changed in, 20, 30 years. This is not the world that my parents assumed I would be living in. It's not the world that my parents, started their careers in. And in 20, 30 years, our kids are not going to live in the same type of world that we live in now. Things change so rapidly that they need to... AB Coffee, thank you so much for that Prime sub. You could use that anywhere and you chose to use it here, and I appreciate the heck out of that. Yeah, the world simply is not going to be the same. And so education needs to keep up with that. Do you have a pager? I had a pager. I never had a pager, but when I worked in IT, we did have Blackberries. Now, I was never on call, thank goodness. But we were emailable at any time of the day. Oh, you had a Nokia. When we were in high school, social media didn't exist. Thank fuck. I don't know what it would be like to go through high school with freaking social media. We barely had an internal email system, and honestly, I'm so glad. We didn't have email with our teachers when I was in high school. I regularly check in with the family to figure out what they want to do. Instead of telling them things aren't possible, I look for ways to move in that direction. That's an amazing way to handle it, in all honesty. I was always told I couldn't be a writer too, Author Goddess, and I was told it won't bring in money. You don't have the spelling knowledge to be a writer. Like, I heard all the excuses, and here I am doing it full time. So... Teaching your kids to find the way forward is much better than just sort of tossing them into the sea and being like, figure this out. We also had computer classes on those big box computers. Oregon Trail, there was a fish game that I don't remember what it was called when I was young, but it was like you had to try and catch the fish based on like their traits, and I was so good at that game. I don't even know what it was called. It was on one of those big floppy disks. Not even the 3-inch floppies. Shy Revenge, how are you doing? Haven't seen you in a while. We fought over getting to play those games. We did. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego was the flippin' best. I was awful at that game when I actually could play it, but oh my gosh, did I ever love that game. We had to like sign up for time on the computer, and it was very popular for Carmen Sandiego and Oregon Trail for sure. There was a fishing game we had on a really old computer. It was a BBC computer, and we had to try and catch them. I wondered too, Peter, because it was such an old, like, pixely. It was Oregon Trail level graphics, original Oregon Trail level graphics, because they eventually updated that game. Sick! Oh no, Shy Revenge. I hope you're taking care of yourself. Being sick is the worst. Please rest. Please hydrate. Please chill with us. Chill vibes. Healing chill vibes. All that glitters is pros. Hello, hello. Thank you for the raid. How's it going? The glitter raid is here. Hello, Angel Faye. How are you? They've been playing Agatha Christie, the ABC murders. What? Is that a game? That sounds so cool. It's going well. Glad to hear it. Were you writing today or were you gaming today? It's a game with glitches. Is it new? Is that why it's glitchy? It sounds super cool. I hadn't heard of it, but I might have to look it up. It was released in 2016. Okay, so not new then. That's not why it has glitchies. Hey, Senator GG, please enjoy your work lurk. I hope you're having a great day. Also, hello, Swiftness author. Pretty fun, a bit glitchy. I'll have to check it out. Overslept, called in sick. Oh no, Shy Revenge. I hope that you feel better soon. All that glitches is gold. Sometimes the glitches enhance things. ATM0, aka Dad, how are you? Ever sit back and wonder how you would handle having 60k plus people in your chat at once? I was just watching it and it was mind-boggling. I think I would die on the spot. I love having a lot of people in chat, but trying to keep up is like, I always feel like I'm missing something. If there were 60,000 people, I cannot imagine how quickly that would move. I can't imagine having 50 people in my chat at once, right? Off to lunch and do errands. All that glitters is pros. Thank you again for the raid. Please have a great day. Dad, how are you doing today? How is it going? How did the 60k chat go? Like, did the streamer keep up with it? Dish the tea. Now that I've reached the part that went completely and totally off the rails, I'm actually very happy with it. When I said earlier, like, it could be great, it could be a total disaster, it's actually great. I'm actually super excited about how this scene turned out. It's just a huge comedy of errors. Book Puppet, hello! Finally made it to a stream. Hope your writing is going well. It's going pretty good. Going pretty good. This scene could have been a nasty surprise for my inner editor, but it's actually quite good. I'm pretty pleased with it. It will come as no shock to anyone that my most watched channel this year was Ghost Peppers. Oh, I watch my husband's streams pretty often. We got a posture check. Ghost was my number 3. Not surprised. Not surprised, Andrew. Actually, Joe was my number 2. I guess because he does so many freaking marathon streams that I end up hanging out in. For me, it's going to be a toss-up between you and Game of Tomes, just because of Nano. Game of Tomes was pretty high on mine too because of the 2 events that I did. I ended up lurking in there quite a lot. pretty happy with that scene. There's just one more part I want to swing back and check. Supernatural writer, hello, how are you? What is up? I wanted to get a little bit of description here. Wanted to get a little bit of tavern description in there because I felt like I sort of walked into a room and said tavern and expected people to kind of construct for themselves what that meant. Which isn't necessarily what we want to do. So just a little bit of a last minute description in there. Pretty happy with that. I'm pretty solid with the sort of comedy of errors routine that the character sort of enacts in order to complete her task. It was totally off the cuff when I wrote it, just kind of from the hip, whatever felt good at the time. And aside from needing to clean up and clarify a little bit of what was happening, I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. So we've got another chapter, or at least another scene, to try and get through here. Um, so we'll see. It's almost 12:30, so I don't know. I again don't know if I'll be able to finish entirely before the end of stream, but I'm gonna give it a try. I might take another quick break here, so just since I'm going between scenes and need to switch gears a little bit. That scene that I just finished editing was very lighthearted and very comical, and now we're going to have something that digs a little deeper and darker because, as I mentioned at the beginning of stream, one of my main characters is about to basically go off the cuff and attack, to her provoked, but to some other people seemingly unprovoked, an entire city of mages. So, just getting ready for that quick tone shift. So I might take a quick bio break and then just go through to the end, see if I can get to consecutive sprints in here, see if I can do it in a 30 and a 20 instead of needing two 30s, so that I can throw dinner in the crock pot and eat some lunch at some point, because as we've mentioned, self-care very important. So let's do a quick bio break. If you need to get up, stretch, walk around, grab a drink, take any medication, anything like that. This is always when I check to make sure that my little thing is open to indicate that I took mine for the morning. I have these specifically because if I don't have this little opening to remind me that I already took my medication, I will forget. So any of that stuff that you need to do, and I will be back in about 2 minutes for more of this productivity stuff. I will see you then. I keep almost hitting the outro screen, and I don't want it to accidentally seem like I'm ending stream. I have returned. My white noise was doing so well, and now I have to mess with it. Fingers crossed. All right, let me just get my hand socks nice and comfy, and we'll do another sprint. So I think my only sort of concern with this one is I may have done a bit of a thought dump, which is basically the same as an info dump, except it's a long internal monologue with no external action to break it up. So I might have to make sure I didn't do that. I'm gonna go ahead and get the timer started, not because I'm not interested in having another discussion, but just because gotta get the stuff done. So we'll have 30 more minutes on the clock. Oh, I should have grabbed my blanket. I'm chilly. This whole bit here. Hey, Frightened Doe. I read your End of All Things, and you do a lot of telling rather than showing. If you could cite some specific examples, I could take a look at that. I try to balance telling and showing. Sometimes you can't show everything. Sometimes you have to tell a bit. Hey, Neo. But of course, I'm always open to feedback. What is up, Neo? How you doing? Have you returned to the old job, Neo? Did that start this week? Number 3, Mr. Pepper. Nice. Mr. Pepper will appreciate that. Oh, you're working right now, Neo. Well, I'm glad to hear you're back to work. I wasn't sure when you would be resuming. I'll probably have to look at most of these after stream, Frightened Doe, but I do appreciate the feedback. Also, keep in mind that that particular book is, I think, 4 years old now, so I'm probably considerably better of a writer now than when I wrote it, which is not necessarily an excuse. But I hope that as the series goes on, the writing obviously improves because I was a better writer as I wrote each consecutive book. But obviously, it's a continuous learning process, and you can always learn more. This that we are editing this right now. So most of what you see from here below is rough draft. We are actually going through and working on that process right now. And you're right. I could have shown the work. There is a scene, I think, if I'm remembering the context of that particular snippet, there is a part where I did try to show particularly how much that work was wearing on that particular character. I only glanced at it in passing because we are in process right now, but sometimes I have to choose between whether I think it's more important to unpack at that particular time or to keep the pace moving. But you're right, I could definitely have done that. Frightened Doe, I appreciate that, and I hope you know I'm not upset with you bringing it up. I can't promise that I'm gonna necessarily go back and edit a book that I published, I think, almost 2 years ago now. But I try and take all of that feedback to heart and to mind for future projects. The project that I'm working on right now and other projects that I'm working on right now. And I will say I have admitted in the past that description is often something that I struggle with, and I'm still learning how to have that balance between when to show and when to tell. So just know that kind of feedback is appreciated. I hope that you were able to enjoy the story despite some of its flaws. And I do appreciate you taking the time. I'm relieved to hear that, Frightened Doe, because for me the most important thing is obviously I want to respect my reader's time. I want to respect my reader's expectation, and I definitely know, going back and reading over some of my older work, that there were things that I could do better if I was doing it now. And I definitely think description is something that I am learning to do better. Unpacking character thoughts, knowing when to show is something that I am still learning. I'm always learning everything, but I definitely think I've learned to do that probably better since I started that series. It's so cool to see familiar faces again. Everyone is happy and ready to work. I already sent 6 emails. The guy before me sent only 3 in 2 months. Well, I'm glad that they're glad to have you back, Neo. I bet it makes a huge difference to have that good energy, that positive energy in your work environment again. They knew it was me because I asked very specific questions. I'm just glad to hear it's going well, Neo. I know you went through a shitty experience, and it's good to hear that it is getting better. I don't know if it's important to mention the process here, just the description of where she is. Cheers, Supernatural. If you ever need a beta reader, you have one in me. I'm about to dive into book 2. I might take you up on that in the future, Frightened Doe. I certainly might. Usually I start out my series with more beta readers, and as time goes on, they slowly have to dip out. So I usually do start looking for new beta readers at a certain point in the process. Let's also get a stretch for Supernatural. Thank you so much for the stretch. I'm certainly not one of those writers who thinks everything I've ever done and published is perfect. I definitely try my best at the point where I am in my writing ability and then try to do better the next time. Con202, hello! Thank you so much for the raid. How's it going? What were you up to today? Were you working on a project? I have this weird spacing going on because I haven't decided if I actually want to keep this here or move it or just cut it. Broke ground on new draft of a script finally after spending ages outlining. Nice! Working slowly through some edits. Trying to give things a bit of a polish. The openings of these scenes have been pretty rough, so trying to get them doing what I want them to do. Angel Faye off to bed. See you tomorrow. Take care, Angel Faye. I hope it's going well. The fun part, writing is rewriting, as they say. Indeed. And I tend to word vomit my first drafts, so editing can be very time consuming, as I'm sure people have noticed. Hey, Anne, how's it going? What is up, my friend? closer to the end of the scene than I thought, which is good. We'll probably do another quick 20 minutes and see how that goes. But checking in with chat. How is everybody doing? What is up, my friends? Oh, this taking a closer look at what Frightened Doe sent, it's actually a different scene than what I was thinking of as well. That's what I get for skimming. I'm gonna switch timers because I can do about 20 more minutes and then I will have to go make dinner for later tonight so that Ghost Pepper can eat before D&D. So let's do 20 minutes this time, one last dash to the end, and see if I can get through this scene. Whoops. Putting a word in the middle of another word isn't going to help anything. Exiled Faye, take care. Thank you so much for hanging out. I hope you get good news tomorrow, Ree or Doggo. I'm sending you both warm vibes and hope for good news. I won't be streaming tomorrow. I'm going to be taking Wednesday off, but I will be back Thursday afternoon for anyone who is interested in hanging out again. For a moment, I read this sentence and had no idea what I originally meant it to mean, but I got it. Section of city, not seconds of city. I actually don't think I'm going to. I had originally written in my notes to possibly expand the end of the scene and see if it needed to go on longer. I actually think that's a good place to leave it, because it gets everything started. And what ends up happening next is, of course, we've had an attack, so in the next scene is when that attack starts to be countered. And I think leaving it at the point of high tension where this character has suddenly gone off the rails and just started attacking feels like it's more interesting, more immediate, and more scary if I leave it there. So that's where I'm gonna leave that scene. I'm pretty happy with it, actually. The opening was quite rough. I definitely needed to rearrange a few things to get the characters' thoughts into what felt like a more logical order. But I'm pretty happy with that. I won't be working on this again until Thursday. I will have to edit the next couple scenes offline, because as I said, I'm not going to be able to entirely. I know we wrote the book entirely on stream, and the intent was originally to also edit the book entirely on stream, but I just, due to time constraints, will not be able to do that because I have a certain amount of time in December before we leave for Christmas, and I have to get as much of this done as I can. Which means, unfortunately, working both on and off stream, because I just can't, I won't be able to stream all day Thursday and all day Friday, which I would have to do in order to do all of the streaming that I originally wanted to do, unfortunately. But I don't anticipate a lot of changes, and the scenes that I'll be editing offline will be action scenes anyway, and it's probably better to keep those ultimately off camera so that there's some tension in the book when it eventually gets published, because that is, of course, the goal of doing this project, this whole I keep wanting to say scene, but it's more than just one scene. Let us see who is online, because I do unfortunately have to hop off. I need to throw dinner in the crock pot so that soup has time to soup. And I need to also eat some food and do the whole self-care thing. So let's see who's around that we could raid. If we can find somebody who is writing. I think we have not rated Crow in literally forever. So I think we should head over there and say hey. Some raid calls for anyone who has the emotes or doesn't have the emotes, as it were, and would like to use them. Feel free to use any emotes that make your heart happy, because the idea is to spread the love, of course. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, guys. I know we had some really big conversations earlier in the stream, and I know I was quiet and much more focused towards the end, but hopefully you guys enjoyed yourselves. It's always a pleasure to have you guys around while I'm working. It certainly gets me through the rough patches. I will be taking tomorrow off, as I mentioned, so I won't be around. I'm actually going to be finishing off the 11th book in the Aravalia Chronicles tomorrow and getting all of that organized so that I'm done with that for the year, and won't be touching it again until January. So I'm going to be doing that off stream, and then I will be back Thursday afternoon for more of this, and Friday morning for a writing prompt, which will end up on my blog. We have 2 of those left to do for the year for the 22 Stories in 2022 project. So I hope to see you for one of those streams. Please take care of yourselves. I love you all. You're all amazing. And I'll see you again soon.